Hey, 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 Mom Nation, and welcome back to another episode of From the Heart, where we talk with women that are impressive, that have risen from the ashes, that have really pulled things together for their families. And today I am so excited. Stacy, I get the chills all up and down because this is the coolest topic. And this is something that is on the lips of all of our moms. I just know it. I've been doing this Mom Nation thing for a long time, and it's kind of like the bird's eye view of what's going on in Momland. And I know that this is a huge topic for everybody. So I'm excited to dive into that with you. Before we do that, though, Stacy with Impress Marketing Group, can you just introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Stacy Johnson. I have my middle name because there's a lot of Johnson. So it's
There is.
Stacy Kalisz Johnson. And I founded Impress Marketing Group. About 15 to 20 years, I don't know, somewhere in between. It was sort of an idea that then came to fruition. And I am a career major advisor, college major advisor, and I help students kind of find their way and identify their vocational personality.
I love that. Now, with every amazing idea and with every amazing resource, there's always a story behind it, Stacy. So can we dive into that? Can we start there? What is your story?
Yeah, great. So when I was pregnant with now my oldest son, who's going to be 20 in January somehow, it's crazy. I was doing some volunteer work with Arizona State University and the Society of Women Engineers. And they had a mentoring matchup with women in industry with students. And I said, no way, I'm about to have this baby. I can't be mentoring anyone. I need a mentor. Yeah. And so a student signed up late, and my friend was the manager of the mentoring program. And so she said, I know you said no, but you have to say yes, because I can't have one student without a mentor. So of course I said yes. And we had a really positive relationship. I helped her navigate things she didn't know that I knew. She ended up getting an internship at a really amazing company. And now she's, fast forward, she's a mom of two, she's a doctor, so on and so forth. But about a year after her, I sat next to a parent, also Arizonan, and their child was 19 and I was 35 at the time. And they were like, oh, our child's not going to make it. He's in college. And he went to my college. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to fail out. And I was like, well, you get a 19-year-old boy to call a 35-year-old married woman and I can help him. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that same thing, I helped him navigate different things in college, get internships, navigate through early career. And now he's an executive at Honeywell here locally. So that kept happening, 5 or 6, sometimes 12, 10, 15. Every year it would be 10, 15 new mentees. And over time, I realized, wait a second, I have a process. I do the same thing in the same meeting, first, second, third, fourth meeting with these mentees. And now fast forward, I have 3 boys. One is 16, one is 17, one is 20. And when they were starting to get to the high school age, I was like, I think I can take what I do there in the early career and lift and shift it into high school. And it works the same as a process to help identify what you want to do in college, or maybe a pivot in your early career. It works in late career too. I just specialize in the early career. And so that's kind of how it all began. It was just like an organic thing. But as an engineer, of course, I like matchy operational processes. So I built infrastructure around it to build it so that there's templates and tools and steps to follow so that you have a clear outcomes when you're working with me on these. But it all started just by saying yes to a request where, you know how the moms go,
Mm-hmm.
Will you help? You should say no because you don't have time, but you say yes, and then it grows into something bigger.
Yeah, this is just fascinating to me because as I think back many, many moons ago when it was my turn, right, to enter the college years, man, I could have used somebody like you. I don't know if it was just not a thing back in those days, and we don't have to talk about what year that was. But I am so glad to know that this is available for our kiddos because it's quite a thing to navigate. Can you give us a little bit of detail on that? Maybe some examples of some things that you've successfully helped these kiddos through?
Yeah, sure. Great question. And I think of my own experience. So when I was in high school, I did have a guidance counselor, and she said to me that because I was good at math and science, I should become nurse or a teacher. And I was like, yeah, I don't like kids all that much. Teens are different. And I don't like touching people. So that would be a really bad career path. And so I was left with this ridiculous book because we didn't have the Google back then. And I just read, page after page of these books trying to narrow it down. And I still had no idea. And I didn't know anybody in my network that was doing anything with math and science other than teaching and nursing. So I just guessed and then kind of figured it out. And I think to your point, it's so much nicer to have tools. So I like tools and processes and templates. So one success story I will share is there was a student and he actually knew exactly what he wanted to do. But the parent perspective was, I don't think you know what you want to do, and I'm not paying for that because college is very expensive. And it was more just because sometimes a teenager can convey like, they just don't talk to you as much, or maybe they're not articulating, or maybe they appear that they don't know when they do know because they're just the way they are. Like my middle son, he knows, but I would never know that from talking to him. But if you talk to one of his teachers, you would get the answer, right? He just doesn't tell me what he tells others. All right. So this situation was like that, where the parents were like, I'm not paying for him to go to that particular expensive school because I don't think he knows what he's doing. And it would be just too much money and it would be a large push-up. And he was very determined, like, no, this is exactly what I want to do. And so we put him through the process. And of course, it's all tools and software and templates that I've built. I know the answer he wants in my head, but there's nothing in the software that should know that. There's nothing in the tools that should know that. So when it comes out, it's like, yes, there we go. So it basically used the analysis tools to tell him, yeah, this is what everything in your interest, your skill set matches up to. And then his parents felt more comfortable and confident with trying to find resources. No one wants to go get a bunch of loans and then have their child, be like, oh, I changed my mind, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And I had another one recently already accepted, pretty sure on their major, going to a very expensive university. So we did the same thing and went through the process so that when she got there, she could be confident, like, this is right. And it tested out to be in her top 10 as well. Then I had a different one who had no clue at all, just sort of maybe like, I don't know, I kind of like this, kind of like that. I don't really know. And we put her through the process and came up with a top 10 list. And then one of the activities in the process that I use is to interview people that know and love you, and then match the results and then rerun. And oftentimes it matches. And oftentimes you can ask people, and you don't need me to do this, just go ask other people what you think you would be good at or what your kid would be good at. And you'll be surprised at what people can find out. So a lot of it is just, digging, because 17-year-olds are expected to have a plan. I'm going to be right. Well, I don't really know. I'm still inventing and changing and recrafting. I'm an engineer, but I have such a passion for working with the teens and early career because of the abundance that exists on the planet. But that has nothing to do with what I went to school for, but it's what fills my bucket every day, right? So yeah, so lots of different success stories with different types of people. I would say I mostly work with college-ready teens, but I don't think that's necessary, right? Some kids, maybe a trade school, maybe a gap year, or maybe just school isn't their thing. It would work the same way.
Do you find that the majority of the students that you speak with, or the teens that you speak with, are confused about their future, or like that boy that you worked with that knew it? He knew what he wanted to do. Do you find more kids are that way?
That's a good question. I think it really is all over the map. I mean, to be 16, 17, 18. So I have a 16 and a 17 and a 19. But to be 16, 17 and be expected to make these decisions. So here in Arizona, we're starting school in July. And like the first meeting of your senior year, they're like, okay, so you got to pick your major. And they're like, wait, what? I just became a senior 5 minutes ago. But by November of your your senior year, it's not required because you still have till May of next year, really, when you graduate. But if you know earlier, there's more merit and scholarships available. So there's a benefit. But to your question about, I think it's a mix. Some students, they were 4 years old and they knew what they want to be. Yeah. And they just, everything aligns to that. And others are like, wait, I have to pick something. Wait, what? Yeah. And, many are getting to college without having any infrastructure on how to do it. And so then they just pick a random thing, and then maybe they don't do very well, or they get a degree and then they're like, this doesn't feel right. And there are tools. I mean, our high schools, we're part of the Chandler Unified School District. They do offer a test that is like a vocational test. It was, the challenge with my kids is they didn't want to sit for a 2-hour test. So I couldn't get any of my 3 to take it. So there are tools available in other realms as well to help with this answer. But no, it's all students are all over. And, some do know, but also some might know like, oh, I want to work in this space, but how does that work really, right? I love history. I want to go to college for history. Okay, that's great. But what will you do after?
Right.
Do you want to be, because what if you are studying history, like what employment? So it'd be ideal to have like a top 10 list of careers to kind of keep your eye on and watch for. A good example is in the planet, things change, right? 10 years ago, software engineering was super hot, but it's going to shift, right?
Right.
It just depends on timing. So it'd be nice to have 10 ideas of things you could do and then be able to pivot. But doing the work to have a good baseline, I think just helps you go in with confidence. And that's a big piece of it too, especially for our teens, is to be confident in their decision. And there's just so much pressure that I think is somewhat unnecessary, but there is a lot of pressure to decide.
Yeah. And as you were talking, all I could think of when you were explaining kind of the process, how you help them self-discover, is what a cool exercise in discovering about yourself as a teen,
Yes.
right? Like how many of them actually know who they really are? Like we're still really in the thick of discovering that when we're that young, right? So do you see maybe a natural, like you mentioned, a confidence boost? Do you see some positivity coming out of all of this self-discovery that you're guiding them through?
For sure. One of the gals, she, at the end of our last meeting, we did it by Zoom because she was headed off to college right then. And she was like, this was amazing. I really learned a lot about myself and I feel so much better going to college now. And I was like, that's what I was hoping for. But you don't know because it lands different with every kid, but almost all of them express thanks. Some of the boys don't love the paperwork aspect of the homework, right, in the language, but I also speak boys since I have 3 of them. But yeah, confidence and just knowing a directionality, I think is something that they find valuable. And also it just alleviates some pressure. I think I can remember walking around freshman year, my oldest son, at the Meet the Teacher night. And everyone's got all these papers and the parents are all like freaking out about paperwork and they've got these stacks of folders and I have nothing, right? Because I didn't take a single thing for dual enrollment or AP because I knew that wasn't right for my oldest son. But I felt like I was not part of this club where everybody was doing that, right? And so the kids feel that, right? They're sitting next to their peers or their teachers are like, you really should do dual enrollment or AP. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but it's not for every student. And so then you compare. So if you use a process like this to learn about, this is who I am and where I'm going, and I don't really need to compare to Mr. or Mrs. Dual Enrollment and Mr. and Mrs. AP, right? It's not for everybody. I have 3 kids and they all have a completely different profile, but they can be confident and then maybe it will alleviate some of the stress that we as society are putting on people.
Yeah, and let's please do that because my goodness, there's so much to stress about. So it sounds like they learn what they're good at.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one of the activities is that they have to teach me what they're good at. And then we use templates to pull that out. And some of them get stuck, right? And they have to call me and go, is this what you mean? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And then they go through the exercise and you don't think about what you're good at. And so an example might be by looking at what you don't like, right? So you have to flip it around to what you do like, because maybe you don't like being the presenter, but why? It's because the tasks that you do like. Or maybe like me, I would shrivel up if I had to spend my whole day just behind a desk without talking to people. I know that. I like interacting with people. I like being the presenter. I like being the note taker. But if you don't know that about yourself, And so, by the way, 15 years ago, when this process, I started using it myself, is because I went through a version of it. Then I evolved because of my engineering way. And I learned that I like networking, training, teaching, and connecting. So I wasn't looking for a college major at the time because I was, well, since graduated, we won't talk about that timing. But those four things have got to be in my job. Otherwise, I find myself sort of going, and this isn't working very well. And so the outcome also gives those students those kind of overarching things to look for. So their major, their first job, then they can come back to it, which I have done myself, come back to the process 10 years later. I'll teach them how to maintain it on themselves and look at it and make sure if it still tests. So it really is something that they can then keep and evolve over time, so that, that self-awareness, it doesn't go away. And we change interests, but most of the time, in my experience, your value base stays pretty sound, and then you build vectors off of it.
Have you had any students, and I know you've been doing this for a long time, so asking about your past experience with students, might be digging into the depths. When people ask me about past experience with clients from 20 years ago, I'm like, oh my goodness. But have you had any students that have actually discovered something new that they are good at, new that they like, that they had no idea or wasn't even on that trajectory prior to meeting up with you?
Yeah, it's usually rooted in something they're pretty aware that they like, but they don't always realize what the career plan could look like.
Okay.
Right? And so where it shows up is usually in that, or what the colleges might call it, that might be new, because they don't know anything about what a college situation might look like. But it's usually not too super crazy straight for them, because they're doing these things all the time, right? But on the flip side, one of the funny things that always comes up is teenagers typically love gaming, right? So that's
right.
But not every teenager should be a video game designer just because they like gaming, right? So it also roots out things that just because you do it all the time, like we all eat, right? Should we all be chefs? No,
right.
So there's
not me.
Right, exactly. So there's some things that come in there that, kind of you have to realize, well, yes, because we all eat, we like food, that doesn't mean we should work in the culinary arts, but there are people that should. And it usually pulls things out, and it gives them top 10 to 20 things to go investigate. So they can dig in deeper, but most people is like reaffirming things that they knew, but in a different light, from a collegiate lens, because they don't necessarily know, like, oh, I wouldn't have thought that would even be a major, right? But it is. So
does your system or does your guidance include information like, once they get their top 10 routes that they can go, does it tell you how much the money might be that they might make in this job? Does it tell them what the job details would entail? Basics, obviously, depending on what company you work for or whatever, could be different. But do they get that kind of information so that they can see how that kind of sits with them as well?
Yeah, I'm a connector too, so I can't help myself. Like, I'll have a client, and then 3 years later, they're still in college, and like, I just found a scholarship that would work for her, and then I send them the information because I can't help but be constantly thinking about their trajectory. So yeah, the output, I try, because I'm in Arizona, I try to also customize, like, okay, well, which one of the universities in Arizona might be the best, and what might their merit look like, and how would that major then manifest in a career, and what industries are using those right now. And usually you can just use Google to find out like the average salary ranges. And oftentimes the colleges will have percentages on their placement and approximate salaries. So we try to map it all the way through so they can see where they might end up.
Awesome. I feel like that would have been really great information for me to know back in the day when I decided to choose my major willy-nilly and just went to some willy-nilly college. Yeah. Total mess. I needed you back then.
It can be more honed for sure. And I can remember when my middle son was little, he was like, I'm going to work, with animals 2 days a week. I'm going to work with fitness 2 days a week, right? Like you have this like piecemeal. I'm like, that's not out of the realm of possibility these days, but it wasn't like that when I was coming out, right? You had to pick one thing, stick with it for the rest of your life. That's what we were taught. And that is not how it works. We live in a time in the planet where an abundance mindset, right? There's more than enough. Every choice is a chance, and just opportunities never run out.
Absolutely. And things change. I mean, how many of these, it sounds like you keep in touch with some of your students, which is really cool. Have you had students that have just totally gear changed, maybe 10 years into their career? I mean, I know people that have done that.
Yeah, most of them have changed like companies, like jumped in industry or company, but stayed with the same kind of general. I would say that's a very common timing for me to hear from people is 3 to 5 years out of college. I'm like, okay, so I got the job. I thought it was the job. I thought I was in the right major, but now I look for a change. But it's usually because, they think they should get a raise or a promotion. And then, we talk about what that might look like and how you navigate that, right? So then it becomes different skills, negotiation skills, salary planning, trying to figure out, are you going into management or are you staying as an individual contributor? Or maybe you should become an entrepreneur. So 10 years in, they kind of shift around. So for sure, I've seen that, major industry shakeups, deciding to become, a people leader instead of an individual leader in a company. Definitely.
You mentioned the word scholarships a couple of times. And pretend that I know nothing about scholarship. Okay, you don't have to pretend because I don't. Can you give us just kind of a couple of maybe the main bullet points, things that parents out there, moms out there need to know when they are starting to embark on this journey? Obviously, we suggest that they get in touch with you, right? Because you are the expert here. But let's talk scholarships, because I know that is really confusing to people. And I know that a lot of people do need that help.
Yeah, so my oldest son, we were able to find about 90% of his tuition to be covered with scholarships. And he was only a moderate student. So no dual enrollment, no AP, a 3.1 GPA, which depends on your lens. That could be good or it could be bad, depending on where you sit. But the point is, his academics wasn't what was getting him the scholarships. So it will be very different if you have an academic 4.0 student. But for him, we found 90%, and here's how, and it applies to the other academic people too, but you focus on the local. So most of the high schools will have a career counselor, guidance counselor that's sort of separate than your individual counselor. And they actually will maintain a list of scholarships that are local, and they are the ones that you're likely to get. So I'll use Chandler as an example. So Chandler has a Chandler Education Foundation that they link right into the district, and they'll give scholarships. So I think last year Perry High School had, or maybe it was the year before when my son graduated, they had 14 scholarships they offered to just our high school from that foundation. So that's across a district, and Gilbert has their own foundation and so forth. So local scholarships. Also, there's clubs on your campus, like Key Club. There's the Lions Club, which they do. Leo is for the high school students. Those all have scholarships, and they have scholarships at your school. They have scholarships in the city. They have scholarships at the state. There's also an Arizona Foundation scholarship application where when you fill out one application, it applies to like hundreds. And so my main tips for this is when you're in a freshman year, start volunteering and do lots of volunteer work, because you got your academics and your volunteer work. So if you're comparing apples to apples, right, the volunteer work will tip the scale even for a comparative GPA. But my son had only the moderate GPA, but he had a lot of volunteer work. He did student council. He was a scout. So find something your kiddo is interested in and then double down. We do volunteer work with the American Heart Association as well. So he had a lot of volunteer hours, and that really made a difference on the applications. So there are also, you can I bought a book called The Ultimate Scholarship Book, and I read it cover to cover. It's like this thick. And we applied for a lot of scholarships, but we didn't get any of the nationwide ones. And I think that was pretty much what I had seen and heard and learned as well, that local is where to invest. And that's what we found. And then schools will have their own merit. So each one of the major colleges, and even like Grand Canyon University or the community colleges, they have their own scholarship infrastructure that is specific to the school. So the earlier your child gets accepted, there might be extra scholarships. So my son, the one who's in college now, he committed early and he got 2 bonus scholarships. They were moderate, $400 or $600. So maybe $1,000 total times 4 years, but every $1,000 makes a difference because it's at the overall bill. Now, my second student is applying right now for colleges, but he's like a super academic, excellent academics, but he has some of those other clubs and activities as well. And I think the GPA is going to be even bigger contributor. So you have the both. So that's tricky, but there's scholarships for everything. There's a scholarship for being tall.
Really?
Literally a foundation.
I wouldn't have gotten that one.
Foundation. But then there's probably also one for being small or short or whatever. There's so many scholarships, and there's, the Chandler Rotary Club has scholarships. There's the tip that I had read that I did was then Google search your interests with foundation and then your city. And now when we talk about the city of Phoenix, you also have Chandler and Gilbert and Queen Creek. Just because you live in Mesa doesn't mean you can't get a Tempe scholarship. So it's really the hustle.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that when I'm working with someone, I just had a student, he was going into aviation. And I'm like, I have my own scholarship database, if you will. And so I don't have, here's the 10 for aviation that I found. I'm sure there's more, but if someone hands you 10, you don't have to go hunt them down, just apply for those 10, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to be out there. There's Facebook groups just like Mom Nation, but just for scholarships, but it can also become overwhelming and a full-time job. So I just hold it right down to, this is what we do in Arizona. And when I'm working with the student, I can't help it. I find stuff. I have a nursing student. There's a St. Luke's, the hospital that closed. They have a special scholarship for nursing students based in Arizona. Pass that on to somebody who's in nursing. So I keep track and then, chase people down. It's just a connecting thing. But there is money. You just have to hunt.
I love that. Thank you for those juicy tips. That was amazing. Now, you had mentioned one tip was when you're a freshman, begin doing some volunteer work, and that's going to help out in the scholarship area. But are there any other tips that you have or any suggestions that you have for parents where we can start at home before it's time to connect with you with these kiddos, to start preparing them, maybe even just start having the conversation? What are some things that we can do as parents?
Yeah, so I have 2 tips that maybe you'll be like, oh, I didn't see that as where she was going with those. But these 2 tips are things that everybody could start, even if they have a kindergarten, that I think had a big impact for us. The first one sounds ridiculous, but is definitely hitting home right now, is to get an alarm clock. So because we got to raise college. Not only do we have to get them into college and get them scholarships and pay for it, but then they got to go and they have to wake up and go to school. So here's what I've been observing. My mom bought us, my kids, they were 2, 3, and 5, these little stormtrooper alarm clocks. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're just going to set them for 2 o'clock in the morning, wake us all up, and it's going to be annoying. But that is not what happened. They started waking up with their alarm clock when they were little. Like my oldest son was 5. He'd wake up with his alarm clock, get his school clothes on, and be ready. And I'm like, what is happening? But unfortunately for me, I kind of let them be lackadaisical. And now as teenagers, I worry, like I'm traveling the rest of this week. What if they don't wake up? And so many of my friends are getting their kids to college and they're all sleeping through their first classes because they're not used to getting up. So it seems ridiculous, but it isn't. They have to practice, and practicing under your watch is better. So start right away if you're not already doing this. And if you are, you're like, that's the dumbest tip. Well, I didn't do it with my teenagers, and it has really been a problem. And then the second tip is also not probably where you thought I was going, but has been a high impact, is learning how to type on the home row. So I did it mostly because I have 3 boys. And if anyone else has 3 or more boys, like anytime they're home, it's complete chaos. So I just needed them to be doing something so that I could take a minute. So I had them practicing on dance mat typing and nitro type years ago. And it all stemmed from my own experience. I had We took typing back in the dark ages when I was in high school, but
on a typewriter.
Right, on a typewriter. But now they don't take typing, but yet every single thing you do is on a computer.
Right.
So I had an internship when I think I was 19. I was already in college. And that internship, this Italian man was ranting into a cassette tape. Google it if you don't know what that is, young people. And I had to like digitize his work so that he could apply for patents. But I now type faster than most of my peers. And I swear it has added 40% efficiency to my life. So I was like, I want to pass that on to my kids. And so recently, my middle son, we're doing all these scholarship applications. We're doing all these college applications. It's a ton of typing. And he's hustling through it compared to my oldest son, who just isn't as focused on the home row. So that tip, you can start it when they're 5 years old. Start playing dance band typing, learn the home row, and that efficiency just amplifies through their life because they can do that. So those are the two things when I meet with parents that are kind of like, oh my gosh, what's the foundation? Those are two things I start these today because they made the biggest time impact to our collective 4-year high school journey.
I love that. And I am very proud to say my son does both of those things.
Yay.
So those are some impactful skills that we can begin, prior to even teenage years.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of more teenage year specific skills that you would recommend?
Yes. So there are 4 things that we identified when my oldest son was really getting close to preparing for leaving for college. And the one was really interesting. We went on a trip as a family, but he decided to stay back because he was in his senior season of his sports and he didn't want to miss. Understandable. Yeah. And people were like, wait, you're leaving your 17-year-old for 10 days? I was like, well, I was in college when I was 17. So yes. And there was definitely some criticism in our network, but we went with it anyway. And he was home for 10 days. He watched the house and he practiced adulting. And when we came home, we learned 2 things. One is he spent like $1,100 while we were gone. And everyone goes, what? On what? Right.
On what?
On what? Food. Because he just went out for breakfast, lunch, dinner, coffee with friends, family, because he was he was adulting and that's what you do. You go out, you go to Starbucks and Baskin Robbins. And no concept of, but wait a second, you don't make $1,100 in 10 days. So where do you think this money is coming from? And it took us some time to unwind that, but we realized this was our fault. As parents, we didn't teach him how much it costs to eat out and how much it costs to buy groceries. We just never sat down and did that. So we had to do some, that summer we had to really get organized. So we had him shop for his groceries, store them, on his own little shelf, and then prepare his food so money planning, budgeting. The second one is time management. They have no concept how long things take.
Right.
I had a recent client and I asked him, okay, how often should you wash your sheets? He's like, I don't know, maybe every 2 weeks. I was like, yeah, that could be reasonable. I was like, how long does that take in minutes? And he was like, because he's never done it ever. Yeah. Right? Because why? The mom
does it.
Mom's doing it. So time management, money planning, and then just household skills in general. They don't know how often to clean the toilet. They have no concept of how long food will stay good in a refrigerator unless they took culinary in their high school. And my son was throwing out all kinds of food because he had no idea. Or 6 days, later than the expiration date, can I cook this meat? No. Or 2 weeks after a turkey sandwich has been put in the fridge, can I eat this? No. Right? They have no idea. So just learning that. And then cooking. So money planning, household skills, cooking, and then time management. So the cooking, funny thing, because now I'm in these college groups with other moms talking, very similar to Mom Nation for the colleges. They have fire alarms all the time because kids don't know things like take the pizza out of the box before you cook it, or open the ramen package. You have to put water in there before you cook it. They have no idea. Basic. And I'm not sure I would consider any of these really to be food, but they don't know how to cook the basics, and they don't know about balanced food at all because they don't know how to cook the basics. So it's really interesting because you think, oh, but I'm teaching my kids these. And I thought so too. I mean, I practiced cooking with my kids when they were 9, but then when they were teenagers, I wasn't really reinforcing that. And I play a little game like about time management. Like when we get in the car, it takes like 19 minutes to leave the house. Like, that's almost more than 1% of our day. People might get in the car and then oh, I have to run back in. And so I watch the clock, they run in and then they come out, and I'll ask them, how long do you think that took? I don't know. 1 minute? No, 9 minutes. 9 minutes. It took you 9 minutes. You have no idea where 9 minutes went, right? Yeah. Because they just have no concept of how long it takes to do activities. And if you can't figure that out when you go to college, right, you have 16 hours of classes, then you're supposed to do, anywhere from 2 to 4 credit hours, or 2 to 4 hours for every credit hour of homework. And if you have labs, depending on your major, you might have to work part-time. You have to be able to figure all this out. So we do a lot of time blocking in our household so that they can see kind of how to manage their day.
I love that.
The household skills, mostly cleaning stuff, because they don't, especially the boys, they don't do it. Mm-hmm. Then food and the cooking and then time management.
I love that. And I agree with you. I feel like that's so giant. And having an 11-year-old myself at home, yeah, we've done the fun cooking, like you mentioned. Yeah, he's helped me, clean stuff. But was I really showing him, how long things take, how often you should do it? No, I wasn't. And it never really occurred to me to do that. So thank you for having this conversation with me. You just changed my life and my son's as well. So thanks.
He may not be so thrilled when he has to do some chores, but it will serve him well later.
Yes, he'll be all right. My last question for you, Stacy, before we wrap up here, is you had mentioned a gap year in our conversation, and that brought me to kind of start thinking, are there students that come to you that you suggest taking some time off before they get into school, and why? And then the second part of that question, do you ever have students where you're like, you know what, maybe going off to a university isn't for you?
So I include that in my conversation because I think back to that story I told you about how I was walking around on the campus and all the parents had all the dual enrollment and the AP paperwork. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. Is my son going to make it? Is he going to be okay? Because he's not good at all this. And I felt like it was alienating, right? I was like all the comparison that people do, and we try not to, but we do it. I just felt like I wasn't really included. And so I want to be inclusive in that I don't think there's any one answer. And I said this earlier, we have to have an abundance mindset. I just came from a meeting earlier today where they were talking about workforce development for the state of Arizona, and we don't have enough workers to complete the power requirements that we have, the industry requirements, the onshoring of semiconductors, we don't. So there's so many opportunities. There's not just one path. I personally work with college ready just because that's my area. I've worked with universities my whole career. I work in this space. I am a college graduate, but I think there is definitely students that those would be the recommendations, but I haven't encountered them. But I just believe that there is just more than enough work for everybody. And every choice is a chance to grow, whether they choose that gap year or not. And then opportunities are just going to keep coming no matter what. However, I'm sure that parents that think like, I think myself being like college was not an option for me. My parents were like, you're going to college. And so I was like, okay. I think if my kids said, could I do a gap year? We would be doing some work before we determined that was okay. So I tend to work with the college student, not so much skilled trades, but I'm on the board at Gateway Community College where skilled trades is the main thing. So I know some of the industry. It's just who I have in my network tends to be my STEAM kids peers. But I think there is all of those things could be outcomes for people. The process is agnostic. If you're good at math or not good at math, or you like working with people or don't, it doesn't matter. So I will eventually encounter a student where that's a recommendation, or maybe that's an idea they have and they're trying to build a case with their parents. I'm sure that will come. I just haven't as of yet.
Well, thank you for that very detailed answer. I appreciate that. How can now I have your contact information in the show notes to make it easier for people, but I would love for you to share what is the best way for somebody to get in touch with you to begin this process or even just to ask questions?
Yeah, sure. So I use my full name, Stacy Kalisz Johnson. You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram and message me there directly. And then the contact information, I think, will include a Linktree link that has a request form as well. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Stacy. I really appreciate your time and your expertise and all of the value that you brought to the table today. Again, I know you answered a lot of questions that are out there just in the mom community, just in the chatter that I hear, in the posts that I see. So we really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. If you guys want to check out any of our previous episodes, hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That's the handle. Scroll down just a little ways. You will see the From the Heart playlist. It's the very first one. If you prefer podcast style, YouTube actually has podcasts now, which is kind of cool. You can find that at the top of our homepage as well. If you're looking just for the From the Heart podcast, you can grab it there. Or if you prefer to have access to all of our shows for all of the topics that we talk about here at Mom Nation, then hop on over to your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. There you will find us. Click the bell to notify, download the episodes, like us, give us a review, please. I appreciate that. We got a couple the other day, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. That absolutely helps us, and you will never miss an episode. Thank you again for being here, Stacy. We appreciate you.
Welcome to Mom Nation, where moms find real support, real connection, and real community. Founded in 2014 by Katie Holly Lambert, Mom Nation started as a way to unite and empower moms. Now it's grown into a movement. Through vibrant communities, local events, and meaningful conversations, Mom Nation helps moms grow, share, and thrive together. Listen to From the Heart, where we share inspirational stories, useful information, and discuss a variety of women-related topics. And check out Live and Learn, where moms just like you share helpful tips, tools, and real-life skills. Be part of something bigger. Visit www.momnation.com and follow us on social media, because motherhood is better when we do it together.